At this time, I would like to invite our panelists up to the stage, as well as Dr. Enriquez. Our panelists for this first forum are Dr. David Hall, Dr. Dawn Straney, and Dr. Ray Vea.
Let me go ahead and introduce our dignitaries in the audience, beginning with our chairman of the University of Guam Board of Regents, Dr. Chris Perez. Oh, he's outside. Yes, and none other than the president of the Guam Community College, representing the Pacific Post-Secondary Education Council, Dr. Mary Okada. And a former president of the University of Guam and a member of the Guam Education Board, Dr. Jose Cruz. The Honorable Vice Speaker of the 31st Guam Legislature, Senator Benjamin Cruz. Honorable Senator of the 31st Guam Legislature, Senator Sam Mabini. Honorable Speaker of the 31st Guam Legislature, Senator Judith Wonpeth. Honorable Senator of the 31st Guam Legislature, Dr. Eileen Yamashita. Okay. Yes. Okay. Yes. And now we can begin. We have representatives, two of which are peer universities of the University of Guam, and the third being a strategic partner of the University of Guam. So, ladies and gentlemen, our first member of the panel, Dr. David Hall, president of the University of the Virgin Islands. Dr. Hall began his tenure as the fifth president of the University of the Virgin Islands on August 1st, 2009. Under his leadership, he instituted a Master of Arts in Counseling, Psychology, and a Bachelor of Business Administration in Hospitality and Tourism Management, and launched a new Caribbean Center for Green Technology, a Center for the Study of Spirituality and Professionalism, a Center for Student Success, and an Institute for Leadership and Institutional Effectiveness. The university received a $1 million pledge to create a science building and a $5 million gift to create the 13D Student Entrepreneurial Competition and fund the Sokolov Endowed Professorship in Entrepreneurship. And since his tenure as president, alumni contributions have doubled at UVI. Dr. Hall taught for more than 25 years in law schools at the University of Mississippi, the University of Oklahoma, and Northeastern University. He is awarded the honorary degree of Doctor of Laws from the New England School of Law in Boston, Massachusetts, and has been honored by the Massachusetts Black Lawyers Association as a trailblazer. He was appointed by President George W. Bush to serve on the Legal Services Corporation Board of Directors. Dr. Hall's publications include works on civil rights, the U.S. Constitution and race, legal education, and social justice. He has authored a book on the intersection of law and spirituality entitled The Spiritual Revitalization of the Legal Profession, A Search for Sacred Rivers. Dr. Hall is a native of Savannah, Georgia, and holds a bachelor's degree from Kansas State University, where he was named an All-American for his athletic and scholarly accomplishments. He received his doctorate of jurisprudence and a master's degree in human relations from the University of Oklahoma, holds both an LLM degree and a doctoral juridical science from Harvard Law Schools. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome for Dr. Hall. Our next guest is Dr. Donald Straney, Chancellor of the University of Hawaii at Hilo. Dr. Straney became the seventh Chancellor at the University of Hawaii at Hilo in 2010. Under his leadership, UH Hilo has established new doctoral degree programs in nursing practice and pharmaceutical sciences, started construction of new buildings for student services and College of Hawaiian Language, opened a new science and technology building, and secured $32 million in funding from the state legislature for student housing. Chancellor Straney serves as co-chair of the Hawaii Environmental Program to stimulate competitive research statewide committee on the State of Hawaii Aeronautics Advisory Committee, the County of Hawaii Island Workforce Investment Board, and the Hawaii Island Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors. He serves as Hawaii's representative on the Council of State Representatives of the American Association of State Colleges and Universities. Previously, Chancellor Straney was Dean of the College of Science and Professor of Biology at California State Polytechnic University of Pomona, where he helped establish international degree programs in biotechnology, joint degree programs with universities in Malaysia and Morocco, and outreach programs to technology businesses. Prior to that, he spent 23 years at Michigan State University, serving as chair of the Department of Zoology and assistant to the provost for faculty development. Since 2003, has served on the National Advisory Board of the Center for the Integration of Research, Teaching, and Learning at Madison, Wisconsin. An evolutionary biologist by training, Chancellor Straney studied patterns of change in a variety of organisms. He received his Bachelor of Science and Master of Science in Zoology from Michigan State University, and a Doctor of Philosophy in Zoology from the University of California, Berkeley. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome for Chancellor Straney. And our third panel is Dr. Renato B. Vea, President of Mapua Institute of Technology from Manila, Philippines. Dr. Vea has been President and CEO of MIT, located in Manila, since 2000. He was formerly Dean of the University of Philippines College of Engineering and Administrator of Manila's Metropolitan Waterworks and Storage System. Dr. Vea worked as naval architect and marine engineer at Hudson Shipbuilders Incorporated in Pascagoula, Mississippi, and at Herbert Engineering Corporation in San Francisco, California. He is a director of Philippine American Educational Foundation, member of the Presidential Coordinating Council on Research and Development, chaired by the Philippine President, and chairman of the Science and Technology Committee of the UNESCO National Commission. Dr. Vea is a representative of the Coordinating Council of Private Educational Associations to the K-12 Steering Committee, and a member of the Task Force on Quality Assurance of the Commission on Higher Education. Dr. Vea was the chairman of the Technical Panel on Science, Technology, and Engineering Education of the Philippine Joint Congressional Commission on Science and Technology and Engineering. He was director at large of the National Research Council of the Philippines. Dr. Vea served as president of the Association for Engineering Education of Southeast Asian and the Pacific. He is a founding fellow of the Asian Academy of Engineering and Technology and a founding member of the Eastern Asia Society for Transportation Studies, where he served as a member of the International Scientific Committee. He was given the Asian Engineering Award by the Asian Federation of Engineering Organizations. Dr. Vea obtained his PhD in engineering from the University of California at Berkeley, his SM in Naval Architecture and Marine Engineering from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and his BS in Mechanical Engineering from the University of the Philippines. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome for Dr. Vea. Okay, so now we will segue into hearing their thoughts, but we'll go ahead and make the transition here.
For our audience, we are very interested in what you have to say. You have paper and pen in front of you. We have our university students around the room in green. So if you have anything that you would like Dr. Enriquez to bring up during this panel session, please feel free to go ahead and raise your hand. Our students will be happy to pick those up and drop them off with Dr. Enriquez.
Okay, very good. How are you doing? Okay, I'm going to ask the three of you the same question, and then from there we'll expand into perhaps other topics from which you've touched on. So, President Hall, I'm going to begin with you, and then we'll transition to Chancellor Straney, and then to Dr. Vea. So, your question is this, and we'll be responding, of course, in that order. What is your university's role as an agent of economic change and development in your society?
First half a day, and good morning to everyone. I'm delighted to be on this distinguished panel, and also want to really thank President Underwood for inviting me and for his vision to create this opportunity for all of us. I'd like to answer the question in three ways, because there are what I would argue three approaches that the university has taken to being an engine of economic development and change within the Virgin Islands. But before describing all three of those, I want to say quickly that one of the things that assists the university in doing this is that the mission statement itself specifically talks about the fact that in addition to educating students, that we should contribute to the economic, political, and social development of the Virgin Islands. So we have a foundation that I think gives the president and others the license to do this. But the three categories are what I would call basic economic development, the second one, diversification and support, and the third, future strategic interventions. And so in my 5 minutes, I will try to briefly describe each one of them, and maybe in the question and answer period, I can elaborate on them. This first category, which I would argue most universities fulfill and carry out, is a product of the fact that we are one of the largest employers in the Virgin Islands. We have over 500 employees over the two main islands of the Virgin Islands. The university attracts between $1 to $2 million annually in federal grants and contracts that come into the Virgin Islands because the university exists. We presently have two construction projects, a dorm on our St. Thomas campus, an academic building that is done jointly with our RT Park, that amounts to about $22 million in construction, which allows for somewhere between 70 to 100 construction workers to be employed, which has all sorts of downstream benefits to the territory. In addition to that, our centers and institutes provide consulting services to governmental agencies in the Virgin Islands at a rate lower than probably what they would get in the open market. And last but not least, our Eastern Caribbean conducts the census for the Virgin Islands. We're one of the only universities that conduct the official census for a state or territory. And so all of those that I just mentioned allows the university in a very basic way to contribute to the economic development of the Virgin Islands. That second category, though, which I am calling economic diversification and support, came about through one of my predecessors, Dr. Orville Kien, who is a colleague of Dr. Underwood. He felt that the Virgin Islands, being 85% dependent upon tourism, needed to explore some other ways to generate revenue, to create employment opportunities for our students, and had the foresight to create a research and technology park that has a focus on e-commerce, because the internet pipes that run from the United States to Latin America goes right through the Virgin Islands. We were able to tap into the global crossing network that allows e-commerce companies to decide to relocate in the Virgin Islands. And so the park, which started in 2005 and had a slow existence, is now really reaching a very mature state. There are 13 companies that have now been attracted to the Virgin Islands. A couple of those were local companies that reconfigured their operations. And so what the university is doing through the Research and Technology Park is really adding a new sector to the economy that didn't exist before, which I think has a great potential. The support area is that we have as I think this university has, a small business development center that helps to support emerging small businesses with technical support, etc. So it's not creating diversification as much as it is trying to just support those traditional types of businesses. The last category, which excites me the most, is what I call future strategic interventions, which are the things that are now on our drawing board that we feel will really have an impact going forward. And I will just talk about them quickly. There are two major areas that we have decided to make a tremendous impact on the economic development of the territory in the future. One is in the area of entrepreneurship through a $5 million grant that or gift that we received from one of our donors. We've been able to start an entrepreneurship student competition, hire an endowed chair. But our next phase is to broaden that in order to be an entrepreneurship hub, providing venture capital funds, mentoring and support for entrepreneurs throughout the territory, not just our students. And the last strategic area is that of developing a green eco-industrial park. The university has developed expertise in aquaponics. We have also developed recently a Center for Green Technology. We are pursuing a contract to develop a photovoltaics project that will reduce our consumption of fossil fuel energy by 50%. And that strength is forcing us to believe that the Virgin Islands needs to become a hub for the development of renewable energy. So both of those plans, the Entrepreneurship Center and the Eco Park, have been presented to the government as a part of their economic development, comprehensive economic development plan for the future. We are in the process of seeking funding for both of those, and our hope is that if we can strategically become an even greater player in the economic development of the Virgin Islands, that not only will it benefit the university, but that in the long run it will bring about more sustainability for the entire economy. So I'll stop right here.
Thank you, President Hall. Very good. I'd like to address the same question to Chancellor Straney. What is your university's role as an agent of economic change and development in your society?
Thank you. There, I think this should be on now. Half a day, buenos dias, good morning, and aloha. It is very much a pleasure to be here at the University of Guam. We also view you as one of our peer institutions, and I think in many ways the University of Guam is as close as any other university I can think of in mission and scope to what the University of Hawaii at Hilo is about. The University of Hawaii was founded in 1905 on Oahu by the children of the missionaries who overthrew the Kingdom of Hawaii, intentionally replicating in Hawaii a continental American style university. And it has continued to function in that way for many years. Since then, 7 community colleges have sprung up for workforce development in different parts of the state. And the University of Hawaii at Hilo is the first of 2 four-year schools that were established by community demand. The town of Hilo and the island of Hawaii requested and in the end insisted that a university campus be formed on the Big Island so that the children of the Big Island did not all have to go to Oahu or to other parts of the United States for an education. Hilo has a history of responding to adversity. In fact, it's been formed by a series of extreme events that have tested the economic community in the extreme. Tsunamis that completely wiped out the city on several occasions in this century. And then the cycles, the business cycles, first of sandalwood, then of whaling, most recently of sugar, that have produced a boom and a bust structure to economic development on the island, unbuffered by the size that the Honolulu community can exert on other parts of the state. And the university campus is not the only thing that the Hilo community has insisted happen. After the 1960 tsunami, the Hilo Chamber of Commerce wrote to 70 universities worldwide, inviting them to consider Mauna Kea as a location for astronomy observatories, on a wild whim that it might be saleable and that we might attract to Hilo a very significant high-end scientific research community. And the bet paid off, because within 5 years, NASA and Harvard University and the main campus of the University of Hawaii began establishing observatories that are now the best in the world. And within a year, we should know whether we will be constructing the largest telescope in the world on the top of the mountain at a price of $1.3 billion. That's a lot of construction to run in a community of 45,000 people. And that wild guess in 1960, a desperation move, a Hail Mary pass, if you will, in the wake of a devastating tsunami, is, I think, reflective of the attitude that the people of Hilo have about their role in economic development. They want it, they want to be part of it, and they want to see it happen. I had a flavor of that when I met our new governor the week after he was elected, and he looked at me and he said, pointing his finger at my chest, "How are you going to help me cut unemployment in Hilo in half in a year?" And thinking very hard, I said, we'll build student housing. And he said, "Great, good, that doesn't involve government jobs, that puts real people to work." Sure enough, we have been able to generate the funding to begin construction on $32 million worth of new student housing that adds to about $50 million of previous construction funds that have been allocated to the university, and we'll probably be looking at another $30 million next year for a new building for the School of Pharmacy. So one of the key things that we are able to contribute to the local economy is the construction and the everyday sort of work that we do. UH Hilo, with 4,100 students, employs 700 full-time faculty and staff, but we also employ 650 students. We now employ 500 people supported on contracts and grants, and we graduate about 700 students every year. So every one of the 700 full-time employees every year is generating an additional 2.5 jobs, most of which are in the community on an annual basis. Helping the community see that impact is an important part of what the public communication side of the university has to do, because frequently the community sees the university as the buildings on the hill, and that's where you go and take classes, but the output into the community is less visible. To build our impact on the community, we're doing a couple of things. First, I've asked that we consider how UH Hilo is a Hawaiian university and not just a university located in Hawaii. How do we draw on the experience and the culture of the place we are to inform and shape the work that we do? We've been good at doing that, actually. The University of Hawaii at Hilo has been part of the driving force behind the renaissance in the Hawaiian language in the state. Hawaii is, by constitution, bilingual, and Hawaiian is a completely equal language to English, but not many people speak it. Our faculty have developed a system of immersion schools throughout the state where students are instructed only in Hawaiian from K through 6, and then in both Hawaiian and English in high school grades. The products of those schools are now coming into university, and I've asked the faculty to consider how we're going to create the capacity to teach first general education courses in the Hawaiian language as well as in English. Students coming to UH Hilo should know that they're going to school in Hawaii and not just happen to get off at that airport out of any number of others that they could do. But because of the instruction in Hawaiian, there are now a whole set of jobs that are available in the state of Hawaii for people fluent in Hawaiian. Translators for local businesses, because you can transact business in Hawaiian, and the business need to be able to accommodate people who wish to do that. Media production in Hawaiian, television and radio jobs now exist that 20 years ago simply weren't there. All because a group of faculty took the legal opportunity to generate a dynamic and vibrant and living economy based on the Hawaiian language. We're also focusing on applied learning, learning that can help students take what they know from classes and put it into practice using their knowledge before they actually get their degrees. In part, I resonate with this idea because I too spent time at Northeastern, which is the leading cooperative education school in the country, and saw firsthand the effect that being able to use what you've been learning for periods of time, coming back then to the classroom and reflecting on that and working on the dialectic between knowing and doing is a very powerful way of preparing students to be productive in society. So we're now going to require every student who graduates from UH Hilo to have an applied learning experience, an internship, work in a laboratory, a significant service project relevant to their degree, approved by the faculty before they're able to graduate. And I think that will help connect the university to the needs of the community in an important way. We're structuring our new engineering program around that thought. It'll be very much a combination of didactic and applied learning situations. The engineers in the state have been very enthusiastic. They struggled to find enough engineers to hire. And by having periodic interns, they're excited about the ability to shape the expectations of the engineers that are graduated. And I think that will help bring things together nicely. We also focus on partnerships. There is no way in my lifetime, certainly, that the University of Hawaii at Hilo will have the faculty to prepare the students in all the varieties of ways that even the town of Hilo or the island of Hawaii require. I simply can't print enough money to hire enough faculty to do that. But we are blessed by having in Hilo a very large number of federal agency laboratories, state agencies, and in the state, significant military presence that's allowing us to draw in partners to help us expand what we're able to do with the core faculty that we have. And I think much of the next 5 to 10 years is going to be devoted to finding ways to make effective use of partners both in the education of students in the classroom and in helping them learn to apply what they've learned in the real world. Finally, I'd say that UH Hilo is going to play a significant role in economic development in the community by acting as the canary in the mine. We are in a position to see a little clearer into the future, maybe a little further than someone who's worried about the day-to-day activities of a business or an enterprise. And on our island, that means we have a responsibility to help people understand how fragile our existence is in terms of food and fuel and sustainable practice and other social aspects that affect medium and long-term opportunities. The university is one of the major purchasers of food on the island, institutional purchasers, and we've instituted a program where we buy local food first as a way of stimulating the agricultural community and offering them markets to sell their produce. This has been wildly successful and popular with the students, and the community is responding very well as well. We're, in a sense, leading the charge. We have the same challenge on energy. My electricity bill increased $1 million last year. And by all estimates, it'll increase another $1 million next year. And that'll eat up 2/3 of the increase in tuition, the increase in income that will come into the university that really should be used to develop new programs. And we have a responsibility, I think, in that type of economic setting to begin and stimulate the conversation about what it is that structures an energy system on an island that requires those sorts of expenses, and that will, in the long run, be a inhibitory effect on economic development. So, in short form, those are some of the ways that we're serving as a stimulus for development in the community.
Okay, thank you, Chancellor Straney. Oh, certainly a lot of similarities in terms of challenges and opportunities. Next, okay, I'd like to address this question to President Vea. What is the Matua Institute of Technology's role as an agent of economic change and development in your society?
Thank you. Yeah, before anything else, I'd like to thank the University of Guam and most especially President Underwood for inviting me to be a part of your 60th anniversary celebrations. This will sound a little bit less conversational, but please allow me to read what I have prepared. Well, I believe that our school's roles in Philippine society relative to industry are the following. Number one, provider of manpower. Number two, purveyor of new knowledge. Number three, a source of solutions. And number four, a creator of new companies and industries. Such roles simply reflect the school's nature as society's primary instrument of knowledge transmission, application, and generation. They are generic and are actually encompassed in our statement of mission. Well, insofar as a school is sensitive to the current situation and is appreciative of the concrete needs for change and development, then these generic roles take on a form that adapts to current realities. In a like manner, our vision is premised on these realities. As in many other countries, the major driver of change and development has been globalization. Accordingly, our vision is for our school to become a global center of excellence. The question before us now is how to shape such generic roles that I earlier mentioned to respond to the challenge of globalization. As a provider of manpower to our industries, our school is trying hard to make sure that it provides graduates who are trained to the highest international standards of competence. There are some who argue that such a practice leads to brain drain, since our graduates become very employable outside the Philippines as well. Why not train and educate them just for Philippine needs? We say that we do not see any dichotomy between the needs of Philippine-based industries and those of other countries, since our firms cannot be but part of a global supply chain. The only logical step to take then, I believe, is to train and educate more and more of our young people so that even if many of them leave for distant shores, we can still manage to satisfy our own needs. In engineering in particular, on the ground, educating our students to the highest global standards, we believe, at the very least means, number one, adopting internationally developed and accepted desired graduate attributes, and that's Washington Accord language, or student outcomes, that is ABET language. And number two, tuning our undergraduate curricula and the methods of delivering them to attain such outcomes. And this, we believe, we have done at Mapua. As the Philippines climbs into an investment-driven stage of global competitiveness in some sectors, such as the semiconductor industry, in addition to the resource-driven sectors, such as mining and business process outsourcing, we can try to match the needs of these new sectors with graduates who can absorb, employ, and tweak and play around with advanced technologies. If still the country rises to the innovation-driven stage of global competitiveness in other sectors, I would bet on IT, and I hope the marine sciences and technology sector, then we will have to supply the manpower that would be capable of R&D work at the cutting edges. Responding to global competition then requires not only improvements in our undergraduate programs, but also the instruction of graduate or the institution of graduate degree programs and the accompanying research programs to turn out high technology savvy and R&D capable graduates. Most recently, our Commission on Higher Education came out with a typology of schools that will help it rationalize the deployment of limited government resources. Thus, Philippine schools will be categorized into either university, professional institute, or college. Professional institutes will be incentivized to concentrate on producing excellent professionals and will not be accepted or rather expected to do R&D. They can thus focus their resources on professional training. Universities, on the other hand, will be heavily supported to do R&D at the envelope of knowledge. This is, we believe, a more sophisticated country-level approach to providing the appropriate manpower in response to globalization. Well, but even as the school supplies the manpower that will work out solutions and generate knowledge from within Philippine-based firms, our school must, as an institution, itself be able to provide solutions and generate knowledge to match industry's needs in a globalized world. What are the mechanisms for this? On providing solutions at the most easily understood level, Mapua's high officials serve as advisors to governmental bodies and private sectoral councils that map out responses to the challenge of globalization. A number of our deans, for example, sit on various technical panels of our Commission on Higher Education. These panels set the minimum standards for academic degree programs. They are now heavily into outcomes-based standards. I myself, as president of the school, have sat on advisory groups, task forces, councils, and networks of the Philippine government, and on a research and training institute of the semiconductor and other advanced industries, where the items on the table are mostly related to our country's response to globalization. On another level, we provide consultancy services to government and private companies to solve problems related to globalization through one of our subsidiaries. A few years ago, for example, we conducted a study on engineering outsourcing for our Department of Foreign Affairs. On generating new knowledge for government and industry as an institution, we have not really gained any significant ground. It remains the holy grail of industry-academe linkage in the Philippines. We realize, among other things, that there is a vicious cycle at work. R&D is expensive. We would want to kickstart it with projects with companies that stand to gain the most from it and would thus be most willing to defray much of the cost. However, they will not come to us if we did not have any credible track record. We know that the way out of the cycle is for the school to invest and take the risk. In Mapua, to justify such risk-taking, we have adopted the generation of intellectual property as the organizing principle of our R&D activities. This scientific capital will be the basis of returns on investment. You must know that we are a private school, much in the mold of the University of Phoenix, to understand why we look at the matter this way. Our euphemism for that is that we are a full tax-paying school. But my chairman tells me, Dr. Vea, why don't you become a priest so that we will become tax-free? So I tell him it's too late for that, sir. Well, the acceptable payback period for a private concern is much shorter as against that of a state school that has to consider the much bigger social returns on R&D investments. This calculus of R&D investments should lead to a differentiation of research activities between private and public institutions of higher learning. If developing a research-based industry linkage seems like a pie in the sky for us at the moment, there is yet another role that may justifiably be called an obtainium, with apologies to the makers of the movie Avatar. It is possible that a school may not only cater to the needs of existing companies, but may itself create or cause the creation of new companies or even whole industries. This is exactly what the Massachusetts Institute of Technology has achieved. A Bank Boston study in 2000 calculated the value generated and the number of employees employed throughout the globe by all the companies put up by MIT faculty and alumni. It concluded that if all of these companies constituted a single country, it would rank 24th in the world in terms of GDP. Well, that could be for another time in the long future in the Philippines. Meanwhile, the time is certainly ripe for some changes in our country as it faces the challenge of globalization. A Philippine school that wants to be an agent of change must itself be willing to change in fundamental ways. We do not like to be irrelevant. Well, thank you very much for your attention. Good morning.
Thank you, President Vea. I think what I'll do is I'll go ahead and proceed with the questions that were posed by our audience. A nice segue from President Vea's final statement. And I posed the question to all three of you from the audience. What is the best way to promote change in a university setting? Here we're talking about internal change in light of the many opportunities for responding to the relevance out with what the many challenges and opportunities that are out there within our society. So, President Hall, I'll begin with you.
I think the key is making people understand the compelling nature for change, because universities are conservative in their nature, and faculty members in particular like to keep things, they have mastered a particular subject, and though they're always trying to improve on that, I think a sense of consistency is important to all of us. But what is critical is getting people to understand, somewhat like the quote, if we don't change, here are the things that are going to happen. And so I think that is number one, making change compelling through facts, through a vision of where we're headed, and also through letting people understand the consequences of not changing. However, people tend to embrace change more when they are part of it, and having a very open and transparent management style and approach to governance, I think, is critical. Shared governance is really a treasured value in the academy, and when we don't operate by it, I think we slow down the change process. Now, it can also make change slower because you have so many voices that want to get involved, but I do think that change becomes more meaningful if other sectors are able to contribute to where we're headed. And connected to that is the whole notion of transparency, for people to know what's going on, what the facts are. Our budget scenario is put out every year, what we're bringing in, what we're spending it on. I have a committee made up of faculty, staff, students who are able to grapple with those numbers and to make recommendations to me that I then make to my board. And I believe that when people can see the facts, they are better able to understand that some of the hard changes that we need to make are necessary.
Very good, thank you. Chancellor Straney, anything to add to that?
This is a challenging question for me to answer because I'm an evolutionary biologist. And I taught courses in this that would answer this question that involved calculus, and I won't do that. But to boil it down, what we know about the natural world is that change happens when you have the external force for change, that there is a reason why change needs to happen. And it helps if that's understandable by the organization that needs to change, but there has to be a reason to change. The second piece, though, is that there has to be the capacity inside the organization to move from where it is. And in particular for a university, change will happen when there are some parts of the university that are already moving in the right direction, maybe a little bit, maybe something that could be improved, but enough so that there's an example that others can follow. And many of the successful change efforts I've seen have involved identifying the pioneers who are moving in the right direction, supporting them visibly, making their success apparent and well known, and basically encouraging others to follow. Pioneers are probably the most important component of a change agenda for a university.
Thank you very much. President Vale?
Well, among the first things I did when I assumed office was to call a national, or rather a congress of our faculty members, and I invited government leaders, Secretary of Education and Science and Technology, and industry leaders to the conference for us to together appreciate what the situation was at that time. And I believe that for everybody to be aboard, we must have a common understanding of the situation and what we have to do. So we do this now on a triennial basis, and in between we have conferences, planning sessions with our faculty members and the staff, where we assess periodically and monitor our progress according to our plans. So there's nothing like conversation and being on the same page. And I think maybe this has resulted in the success of a multi-year institute-wide effort on our part, which was our working together to get ABET accreditation for our programs. I view it as having staked my presidency on this particular initiative, and I certainly had to talk with my board of trustees, so I have to work both sides so that they themselves can be part of the effort. So a result of which we now have 8 engineering programs and 2 computing programs, which are accredited under the terms of Washington Accord through ABET. Certainly, that could not have happened if it did not involve the effort of the entire institution. So I think that's the way to go.
Okay. Thank you very much. This question relates to workforce development. It says, we are facing a borderless future that is information-driven and technology-centered. So to develop global knowledge workers, we need to develop 3 core skills: life and career skills, learning and innovation skills, and information media and technology skills. The question is, how does your university develop these core skills? We'll start with President Hall.
Sounds like the person needs to be a panelist up here, so so they already have the answer. We are doing it by, one, trying to insert globalization in our new strategic plan as something that has to occur, that our students have to be exposed to the world, not only through the use of technology and gaining knowledge, information knowledge and technology insights, but also by experiencing this global world. So study abroad, student exchanges. We have a future summer institute for global leaders, where we bring students from around the world to come and study together intensively to learn what it means to be a future leader in a global environment. And certainly those are some of the things that I think contribute to changing the perspectives of our students. So I think technology and being equipped to master technology is critical to the future, but it is also important for individuals to experience it in a very real way. So that to me is one of the limitations of technology and the future, is that we sometimes believe that the fact that I can, through email, communicate with people in Guam and I'm in the Virgin Islands, or even have a video conference with someone in Guam and I'm in the Virgin Islands, that is the equivalent of being here. And believe me, being here is different than those other communications. And I think we need to not lose sight of that. And we still, in this global environment, have to create opportunities for there to be more exchanges, more collaborations, especially for our students who, more so than we, may feel that technology provides all of the answers.
Thank you very much, President Hull. Chancellor Srini?
Yeah, I would agree. To mangle someone's quote used in a different context for this one, you could say that the business model for universities is to turn money into knowledge. Give us money, you get knowledge. The internet has made that a non-exclusive business model, and that alone, we provide you knowledge, you go do with it as you see fit, is not going to take us into the future. We need to worry about the inverse of that relationship. How do we prepare students to turn knowledge back into money? And money here is a surrogate for things of value. It doesn't purely have to be driven on base economic concerns. And we don't do that in the classroom. As President Hall says, we do that experientially, and I think the frontier for universities is going to be to establish, develop, and perfect and work with students on a mechanism for what they do when they know things. So what comes next? How do you go from that to being successful and impactful and actually accomplish something?
Thank you very much, Chancellor Straney. President Vea?
Well, actually, we're trying to do that within the framework of outcomes-based education. Well, when we embarked on ABET accreditation, we asked ourselves, are we doing this for the paper chase, or are we serious about this? Because certainly the effort was really very significant. When we look at it as engineers, when we look at outcomes-based, we said, oh, this is like management by objectives. We set the objectives and then everything else follows from that, working backwards. So we have these graduate attributes or student outcomes that were mentioned earlier, and more. Actually, it's A to K under ABET, so can apply physics, chemistry, biology, and other sciences in the solution of engineering problems, can design experiments and interpret data, can work in a multicultural environment, in a multidisciplinary environment, can communicate effectively, can appreciate the social and environmental impact of engineering solutions. So with this list of student outcomes, we actually had to go back to our curricula first, the lineup of courses, which of these are relevant or contributory, and we had to drill down further into the syllabi for each of the courses, so that everything is aligned towards the attainment of the student outcomes. So right now, from fresh experience, that is what I would have to say. If there are certain outcomes that we want, then we could, in a very systematic way, actually go back to curricula and try to see how those outcomes are achieved. But the tricky part, actually, and we're only trying to learn this only now, in baby steps, is the assessment process. How you can actually tell that you are hitting the outcomes and at what level. And then you have to institute a continuous quality improvement process to progressively attain higher levels of attainment. So that we're only learning how to do this now, but we believe in the robustness of such a system that we are, keeping on plugging and sticking to the knitting.
Very good, thank you. Our next question from the audience, given that you all have dwindling resources, very limited resources, and you also spoke about partnerships, and you all represent universities that neighbor other island nations. And given those particular conditions that you operate within, how does your institution participate in regional economic development?
Well, just to drive home the point of the dwindling resources, that is really one of the greatest challenges that as a public university we have experienced. In the last 2 years, we've lost about $6.5 million from an operating budget of about 41 million. And so that's a significant example of dwindling resources. We feel, though, that part of the answer is for us to become a major player in the region. And this is the Eastern Caribbean region, because there are a number of two-year institutions in other countries, island countries like St. Kitts, St. Martin's, Dominica, etc. And historically, the University of the Virgin Islands had relationships with those countries, and students in larger numbers came to our university. Over time, for various reasons, that has changed, and 92% of all of our students come from the Virgin Islands. And we have decided that we have to go back to a model that existed before, where we are developing memorandums of understanding with those various institutions and also with those governments, so that they are sending more students our way. And what that past model demonstrated is that when we go to those countries, many of those in leadership positions, both in the public and the private sector, were individuals who graduated from the University of the Virgin Islands. So we have a foundation that we really need to build on, so that we are truly becoming a regional institution going forward. That is part of our new strategic plan. And also, both of the efforts that I talked about as a part of this last phase of our, or third phase of our economic development initiative, we see as regional enterprises. I mean, the Entrepreneurship Center is, though I'm sure the vast majority of individuals who benefit from that will be from the Virgin Islands, but it will also be available for individuals within the region. And certainly the goal around becoming a hub for renewable energy, one as a provider of it and as a user of it, which will hold down some of those staggering costs that were just talked about, because we're facing the same thing. But also to, in the Caribbean, become a leader of a new industry around renewable energies that I think will help other countries within the region as well. So the university historically was a very, very strong regional player and thus a major contributor to the region, and we have to become that again, and I think even exceed what was done in the past.
Thank you very much. I've been given my notice that it's time to wrap up. So do you, I know you want to say something. Please, just share with us what you have. Thank you.
Just real quick, I've stopped talking about declining resources because no one listens anymore. But I find people do listen when I talk about how the campus is finding new ways to generate income from new activities and outreach things. We've also made increasing research, funded research, a very high priority. And that has led us to regional connections. The recently announced Climate Science Center that UH Hilo, University of Hawaii Manoa, and the University of Guam are leading, I think is a really important way that we will exert some of our responsibility to work in the Pacific as a whole.
Very good.
Yeah.
Dr. Payne?
Well, regional for the Philippines means ASEAN and APEC. So as you might know, the borders in ASEAN will all crumble, all fall down by 2015 with the integration of the region as one community, one market. That's 3 years from now, or less than 3 years from now. So, you know, people will, there'll be free flow of goods and services, capital, information, people and professionals across the region. So we're preparing for this, both in a cooperative and a competitive mode. So we work with the schools in the region and we continue dialogue with them to harmonize standards. And also, even in the APEC, there's a very concrete framework of how to do this. The harmonization of education and standards and also qualifications for professional practice. So we try to be active in all these undertakings.
Thank you very much. Such a distinguished panel. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, our CEOs, for your wonderful insights, and we look forward to further partnerships with all three of you. Thank you very much, our first partner, but we certainly have a lot in common, and we look forward to those collaborations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Enriquez. Again, as you look around the audience, you'll notice many dignitaries in the audience today. We have the Honorable Robert Wetruel from the Consulate of the Federated States of Micronesia, Consul General. From the Consulate of Palau, the Consul General, the Honorable Jeff Kenty. From the Consulate of the Philippines, the Honorable Bayani Mangabin. And from the Taipei Economic and Cultural Office, the Honorable Paul Wang. And as you've also, who was already mentioned this morning, our Public Auditor of Guam, Doris Flores Brooks. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attention this morning and your excitement from all the questions we have up here.